Hello there, Roman's here and welcome to my next music review. Today it's going to be Deep Purple Infinite.
Music review. Music review.
Next year it's going to be 50 years since the Deep Purple's first album. 50 years. So there's a question, does a band like Deep Purple still need to make new records? And well, hopefully at the end of this review you'll get the answer. And me too. Before I even start, I must confess that Deep Purple are one of my most favorite bands. I'm a huge fan, and I consider Deep Purple to be the most iconic rock band, really. Now, there are a lot of people who consider Led Zeppelin and their first album to be the first true hard rock record, but I dare to disagree, as I think it's the Deep Purple's In Rock that was the first really heavy, loud, and very rough rock music. Well, this is probably a topic for another discussion. I think that Deep Purple are a band that released many great records. They are one of those bands that actually participated in creating history with their records. With the MK2, when they had Ian Gillan, so the original, the most famous lineup consisting of Ritchie Blackmore, John Lord, Ian Gillan, Roger Glover, and Jan Pice or Pierce, or I'm not sure how the drummer is pronounced. They created a lot of iconic records, especially in rock and Machine Head. Then, when Ian Gillan was replaced by David Coverdale, and when Glenn Hughes entered the band as a bass player and a second vocalist, suddenly the band was one of the very first to combine rock music with funk, soul, and R&B. Then 80s saw them incorporating some of the pop elements, and even though that Perfect Strangers was probably the last really appreciated record from Deep Purple for many years to come, I think that House of Blue Light was a great record. I really enjoyed a lot, and I think that Slaves and Masters with Jolene Turner is one of the best records they ever did. When Steve Morse replaced Ritchie Blackmore, I think that Deep Purple kind of went to a more bluesy direction, as their music became slightly more blues oriented, especially with the record Perpendicular. Just listen to the song, Sometimes I Feel Like Screaming. And even though I have listened to majority of Deep Purple's records, I haven't listened to the records Abandoned Bananas and Rapture of the Deep, which I'm planning to in near future. 4 years ago, when Deep Purple announced the new record, Now What?, it was a big surprise, because the band was about to release a new record after 8 years, and people wanted to see if they were able to still bring something new to the table, or if they were simply able to write good music. And Now What was a big surprise. It was a very appreciated record by fans, by critics. I loved that record because it was very heavy, very progressive, very epic, very modern in a way. And Deep Purple seemed to have pushed the boundaries of their music. At that time they were kind of promoting it as probably their last record. So logically, when they announced a new album for this year, I got very excited, and I wanted to see what kind of direction did they take with their new record. So let's start. The very first song on the record is called Time for Bedlam, and it's got a very strange beginning where it kind of sounds like you're on a mass and the priest is preaching, and I really like the lyrics. It's a political song, and I really love those metaphors. Sucking my milk from the venomous tit of the state. It's a really very original. This is probably the song that really stands out from the lyrical point of view, as the rest of the record pretty much follows the typical blues lyricism. So most of the songs seem to be like the collections of some stories. And even if you watch track by track videos on YouTube, most of them are based on some kind of a story that individual band members went through. And some of those stories are really very interesting. It's very similar to, for example, Smoke on the Water, their most iconic song. It's also a story. The whole song describes what happened at the time when they were recording that album, Machine Head. This is pretty normal because if we really think about it, hard rock and before that rock and roll evolved from blues music, and blues music was music where people sang about their struggles in life and about things that they went through. So this is blues tradition that can be heard all over the new record. But when it comes to the music itself, I think that music as well is very vintage sounding. So you've got Hammond, you've got typical guitars. Just for example, the second song, Hip Boots, when I heard the riff, I could immediately say, wow, this is a typical Deep Purple riff and Deep Purple song. You can bury me up to my knees in shit, or anything else, I don't mind a bit. You think I'm gonna drown, but you wrong, 'cause man, I got my hip boots on. Well, as you can see, that song obviously doesn't sound very good with an acoustic guitar, but it's those pentatonic riffs that Smoke on the Water is based on, and that you can hear many times on this record. And I must say that this new record is like the most 70s the Deep Purple have sounded since the 70s, really. It's a very hard rock and roll record, and I think that this is maybe a step back for me as opposed to their previous record, Now What? But this is simply Deep Purple doing what they can do the best. You know, I really love how at this point, I think in the last 10 or 15 or 20 years, Deep Purple have nothing to prove to anybody anymore. But I think that this is simply a record where they're enjoying themselves, and it really does sound like that. But even though that this record may give a sort of an old-fashioned feeling, like it sounds like sort of a retro, there is also an experiment. For example, there is a song called Get Me Out of Here, and when I first heard the song I was kind of like puzzled, because you can obviously hear that the drum pattern at the beginning is slowed down, and it gives it sort of a glitchy sound. This is actually a drum pattern from the song Bodyline from their previous record, and it's slowed down. And if you listen to that song, that drum pattern, 8 bars, repeated throughout the whole song with only a few moments where drums stop. But this is quite an interesting experiment. The song Surprising is a very good song. I really love the beginning guitar pattern. If you listen to that song and in a 24th second, when he plays that pattern on the guitar, there's one note where he slows down a little bit. It might be a mistake, maybe whatever, but it gives it such a live feeling. If you listen to first Deep Purple records, you can hear some mistakes on those records, and I don't think these mistakes make those records bad. It's quite the other way around. And then there's an epic part after the second chorus, which I think is after the second chorus. I like those epic parts in this song, which kind of remind me of the song Perfect Strangers. And I would also say that Deep Purple includes some prog elements. For example, the third song, which is sort of a like pop/blues kind of song, and it's called All I Got Is You, and it's got an interesting song structure: verse, verse, chorus, verse. So I think that they don't really care about anything trendy, and this is what I like about Deep Purple. Another song I must mention is Johnny's Band, which starts with a sort of a keyboard pattern, which sounds quite modern and fresh. And this song kind of reminds me of the song Woman from Tokyo from their 1973 record, Who Do We Think We Are? And lyrically, this is a very beautiful song that may slightly describe Deep Purple. You know, it's again a story about a band that rose to fame, then they had some sort of a period where they were successful, and then they kind of drifted away. You know, it describes that not all band members remain in the band, but at the end the band plays in a bar, and maybe there are fewer people seeing them, but they are doing it for the music, and they like the music, they love the music. And even if they are not as successful as they were before, they still enjoy playing. So that might be really about Deep Purple. And this kind of reminds me that actually the only band member currently in a Deep Purple is the drummer, Jan Pierce. He's the only band member who was on each and every Deep Purple record as of now. And that's quite interesting. All the other band members, so Stephen Morris is in the band from 1996, since the record Perpendicular. Roger Glover wasn't in the band throughout their 1974 and 1975 period with Glenn Hughes on board. Don Airey the keyboard player is in the band, I think, since 2000s. And well, Ian Gillan didn't appear on 7 records altogether. And when we're talking about Ian Gillan, many people may say, wow, Ian Gillan doesn't sound like he did in the 70s. Well, guess what? He didn't sound like that in the 80s as well. But since the 80s, his voice didn't change that much. And I must confess that when it came to Deep Purple, I used to prefer David Coverdale or Jolene Turner as a singer. But the older I get, the more appreciative of the guy I get. I saw Deep Purple live 4 years ago in Székesfehérvár in Hungary, and that was one of my dreams to see them live. And when they started playing for the first 2 or 3 songs, I was like, I'm not sure if this is such a good idea. He seemed to have struggled through the songs, but it might have been because he didn't warm up, or maybe it was too hot outside, whatever. But after that, he just nailed every song, and the songs didn't get easier after those first 3 songs. Maybe he just needed some warming up. And I was amazed. You know, the guy is 71 years old today, and his voice sounds great. There are even 2 songs, Get Me Out of Here and All I Got Is You. In both of these songs, he hits a high notes, and those notes sound amazing. And for me as a singer, it's extremely important to see a singer who, you know, when you are listening to a lot of bands and a lot of singers, you can pick a certain singer and say, wow, I like how he sings, I like how he sings. And you will try to go that way as a singer. But if there's a singer who's like 60 or 70 years old, you can see the effect of that vocal technique on his voice, whether he's still capable of singing or not. Like for example, David Coverdale, he was one of the greatest singers, but for the last 10 years, his voice sounds like shit. He's not able to sing anymore. But okay, he's in his 60s. Then you've got some singers like Milenko Matijevic or Sebastian Bach who seem to have lost most of their ability to sing in their late 40s. Then you've got Glenn Hughes, who seem to be getting better and better. But I must say, Ian Gillan, heads down to the singer. He's great. I really love his vocal performance. As to the tracklist, there is one more thing that kind of got my attention, and that's Roadhouse Blues, which is a cover from The Doors. I was kind of surprised, as the last time Deep Purple did any cover was back in the 60s with their first singer, Rod Evans. At first I was kind of surprised, like, why would they need to do a cover? But it's simply a song that they enjoy playing, and I think that they did a very decent version of that. It fits the record perfectly. And along with everything I said, I just hope that Deep Purple will continue making records. Probably the best description of this record is saying that Deep Purple really sound like Deep Purple on this record. Because when I played a piece of this song to my friend, to my colleague at work, he was like, what is that? It sounds like Deep Purple. That's exactly it. So, to sum up, I will give this record 7 points out of 10. Pretty good record, and probably more for fans of the genre and of the band. Now, if you have never listened to Deep Purple and you ask me, is this the record I should start with? I'd probably say no. Go to the classics. But if you are a Deep Purple fan, you will certainly be delighted with this record. I like the previous one better, but this is just Deep Purple doing what they can do best, and I'm very glad. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, to like, to share, and see you at the next music review or gear review or whatever. So thanks for watching. Your boots on. I'm a lousy guitar player, that's why I play bass. It's the records. But with this being said, and today we're back, and today we're back, and today I'm back.